Do I think a director's cut will save this one? No. Alright, hey guys, back with another one. This is one that had a very limited release in theaters and but mostly premiered on Netflix. This is the one that, unfortunately, for better or worse, has been getting a lot of hype the past couple years because of the Snyder Cut. This is Rebel Moon Part 1, which is Zack Snyder's latest opus. Basically shitty Star Wars. That was his, which it has a good promotional story of this is a pitch he made to Disney about Star Wars, but they said no, and Netflix said yes, so they took it on Netflix, basically just changed some names around and made it just Star Wars Light, but shitty. And to this, and even from the beginning, before they even released the movie, they're hyping up the director's cut, which feels like an incredibly cynical way to try to recreate the hype of the Snyder Cut, the Justice League Snyder Cut nonsense, which I've talked about playing in the show, and I have no desire to regurgitate now, and God knows I'm hoping this video doesn't attract the Snyder cultists, because God knows I have better things to do in my time than deal with that swarm. But that being said, this movie's out now, and it's bad. There's no two ways around it. It's bad. And I feel kind of bad because because I've liked some of Snyder's previous works. I liked 300, and despite the fact that it kind of missed the point of Watchmen, I still kind of like the movie Watchmen. I actually kind of like Man of Steel. I hated Batman vs. Superman. I hated, mostly Batman vs. Superman, and I have no desire to watch the cut of Justice League again, even though I did give it a fairly positive review when I saw it the first time, but they don't age well. They don't age well at all. And I never saw Sucker Punch, so I can't speak to that one, or the Owls of Dragul, or whatever the hell the movie's called. That is not even close to right. Where the fuck did I get that name? Anyway, but I really do feel, and God, this is gonna be awful to say. So I'm not gonna say it. But this just feels like the more the Snyder kind of drinks his own Kool-Aid, the more he kind of gets involved with these fandoms. And it seems I've heard nothing but nice things about the guy himself. And I'm sure he's a very lovely man, and there's nothing against him, but it feels like his art has just kind of just continued to recede into his worst impulses the less people have been present to say no, don't do that. It's kind of like Tarantino without a proper editor, even though Tarantino's longer stuff is still pretty good. But yeah, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood could have definitely used another cut. Longer isn't always better, guys. But I think I don't think the issues in the movie are very hidden secret. We all kind of, if you've read any reviews of this, you kind of know what they are. It feels like it's been hacked to pieces to justify a cynical director's cut. It's PG-13 for no reason, although it clearly wants to be R. Everyone's character development largely comes from exposition. Everyone just kind of they have this big dramatic intro sequence, and then they're basically a sideline for the rest of the movie. The movie kind of ends abruptly and on the wrong note. And it just feels like shitty Star Wars. It just feels like just kind of rehashed old concepts with nothing really new. And I don't think those are the criticisms that are going to surprise anybody. This movie definitely has a lot of problems on here. Here's the stuff that I'm going to say that I don't think a lot of people are saying enough. The big one for me is I don't know why in 2023 we're still using sexual assault as a blatant cynical plot device. And I get this is part of Snyder has returned to this trope in many of his movies. 300 had it, Watchmen had it, although the source material had it, so I don't know how much he is to blame for that. But to use it again here in your own creative works in a time where I just feel like we as society has moved past that largely. I get it was edgy and serious in the early 2000s when a lot of comic book writers, Mark Miller in particular, was using this trope pretty frequently. But I feel like we as a culture has largely matured to recognize that it's just gross and exploitative and just not necessary. And that's not saying you can't use that as a plot point sometimes, but it has to have a larger purpose in the narrative. It goes back to, you can do anything you want in a film, but you have to know what you're doing. You have to know what you're talking about. And this is a case where it just feels like it feels grotesque. It feels unnecessary. It feels exploitative. It just feels gross. For all intents and purposes, it just feels gross, and I don't know why it's here. It doesn't need to be. There's a thousand different ways you could have gotten the same plot point across that did not require this. It's gross that it's here, and it grosses me that we're still doing this. But even not, that's not like the big stick that maybe not like this movie. It's a big one though. I think it's a big issue that not enough people are talking about. The other issue is one thing I keep saying is like, okay, well, this cut is bad, but the director cut will be better. And I'm here to say I'm not convinced by that, because that would require what we have here to be worthy of expanding on. And let me explain what I mean. A lot of that boils down to the writing. The writing is really ham-fisted. The writing thinks it's a lot deeper than it is. The characters are shallow. No one here really has much of a personality beyond their stock traits. And the visuals and the designs and these environments don't lend themselves to a longer cut. They're boring to look at. And the movie seems very keen that you don't look at them, because so many of the shots are these weird shots where like the background is blurred like 80% of the movie. You don't actually get to look at the worlds these people created, and even if you do, they're so generic cookie cutter that there's nothing really to distinguish them. I get that Snyder wanted to do like a Seven Samurai in space. I get that he wanted to do like Seven Samurai with like a Star Wars motif. Fine, that can work. But it needs more. It needs more than the feeling of an early 2000s edgelord trying to be edgy. Which, especially like a lot of designs of creatures, feels like this is. With Snyder's notorious lack of subtlety to really drive it home. Like Star Wars, say what you will about like the newer stuff. No, like still uses space fascists or space Nazis to like get around a point. There's a lot of fascist imagery and color schemes in the Stormtroopers and the Imperial forces. But at least that still feels like it stands on its own. This one, they just straight up have like Nazi coats and Nazi hats and like turtle shell armor for some reason. It's very overt. It's very in your face. It's very much like, do you get it? It's so deep, you guys. A lot of the characters that show up and then fade out have these long, pretentious monologues that feels like they're saying something deep, but it feels pretty philosophy 101. And the whole point of this film, by the way, I should probably explain the plot. The whole point of this film is to recruit like this group of badass space warriors to eventually come back to this lonely village to defend it from the Imperial forces. And they never do that. They never do that. They go through all this malarkey. I know I said malarkey. They go through all this mess. They recruit all these people, and then the final battle takes place on a completely different planet in a very like a situation that takes away all tension, all build up, and just kind of just chucks it out the window. And maybe there's a cut of like, maybe that's expanded in the Snyder and in the director's cut, and I'm sure I'll have to watch it. But I just don't care enough about anything that's happening to want to see expanded on. The writing's not good enough to justify it. The writing's not good enough that you couldn't make the cut you wanted with originally in the same like amount of time. I don't get why this needs to be what a 3.5, 4 hours, however long the director's cut ends up being. There's no justification in that, because the material here isn't strong enough to make it that long. The visuals aren't good enough to make it that long. The plot isn't good enough to make it that long. None of it works the way it should. And again, I feel bad for Snyder, because the dude's been through hell in his current life situation. And I empathize with that. And I want him to succeed. I want him to find a good niche. I don't want to sit here talking shit about the guy. But this ain't it, guys. This really just isn't it. And I don't think a director's cut is going to make it a good movie all of a sudden. It's kind of like when people kept insisting that the director's cut of Batman vs. Superman was better than the original. And it's like, it may have been. all I know is I walked away angrier than I watched it when I watched the original. So I don't know how well it actually succeeded as a job. If anything, it just opened up more plot holes. And more frustrating elements about it. And I have a feeling the director's cut for this is going to do the same fucking thing. But that being said, maybe I'm wrong. There's a chance I'm wrong. Maybe it will, actively redeem the film. Maybe it will get me invested in this universe. Maybe it will make me want to watch the sequel of however many they're going to make of these. But I don't know. I just know that as it is right now, this movie is a massive disappointment and just shitty Star Wars. What's more there to say? Bye.